might say just believe in yourself. I think God put us on this earth and they gave you whatever equipment you came with, short, tall, strong, not so strong, hair, no hair, make the most of what you got, believe in yourself. And, again, some people are happy doing some things and some people feel like they're never going to achieve happiness. So you first have to figure out what you want to do, who you want to be, and then go do it. So you got to believe in yourself first.
Welcome to the Break Free podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. I have created this venue to honor the people that are making this world a better place, especially in these times of darkness in the world. Today we have with us one of those exceptional leaders. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David. Pleasure to be here.
Dan, for the audience, can you please tell me your name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so my name is Dan Fischer, and I live in Beverly Hills, Michigan. And I'm the president, CEO, and director of the Citizen State Bank here just outside of Detroit.
That's wonderful. The first time I met you, Dan, I realized how good you guys are doing and the help that you do to your communities and providing the financial services they need to thrive, right? So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Dan, to get where you are, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of experience. So let's look back in time to see how you got going. How do you become the CEO of a bank? It's amazing. So let's travel back in time and think about the last year of high school. Where were you at and what was in your mind regarding your career? What did you want to do?
Yeah, so, wow, that's a long time ago, David. So when I think the last year in high school, you're just thinking about, going off to college and I went away to school. So living on your own and kind of going out into the world and flexing your independence. But I was a person who came from a very modest background and started working at a very early age. And so I was, I guess you could say, a hustler, from, doing everything from cutting lawns to raking leaves to, being a helper on a construction site to working in a pizza place and an ice cream store and just doing odd jobs whenever I could. And so I was always entrepreneurial in my thought process, because I grew up in a modest, home financially. I was ambitious. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be into business. And I was kind of fascinated by all of that. So I was bound and determined to tackle the world, go to college, get a degree in business, and anxious to go out into the workplace and make my mark. So I went to college. I paid for my school myself, so I had skin in the game, and so I didn't want to waste my time there. And so even though I had a lot of fun and had an opportunity to make some great friends while I was in school, I worked hard. I worked while I was at school as well, had part-time jobs there. And so it was just an overall great experience. I went to a large university, so I think that gave me a competitive edge, in the sense that the classes were very large. It was very competitive, very good school. And so you really had to have the discipline to do your work and not really depend on the teachers to coddle you through any of the subject matter. So hopefully that answers your questions. That's kind of like a little bit of background there.
Dan, I have interviewed many people in this podcast. It's been over 3 years now. So I can start finding patterns in people's story, and very successful people like you have similarities. Coming from a humble background always helps, because it just gives you that desire of success that you want to better yourself and your family. And also being able to be responsible for your education financially I think is a blessing. You know, personally, my dad told me, I'm responsible until you become 18 years old. From then on, you're on your own, but I'm going to make sure that you get the best education I can give you when you are still a minor. And that's what he did. And then, you know, I had to go through school and I paid for it myself, and I got into student debt, and I always working part-time, exactly like you, trying because see, that's another thing. Like if you look at my scores in high school, they were mediocre. I was doing the barely minimum to get by so I wouldn't get in trouble at home. But as soon as I hit university and I was starting paying those tuition fees, oh, I was taking advantage of those classes. I was always in the honors roll, always on the top of my class because I was paying for it. Right?
Yep. No, I think that's important, and then I think, you know, also when I was in school, even though I was working part-time, I was also involved in sports, so I learned a lot of valuable lessons about teamwork and leadership, being part of the high school sports teams, and then also involved in student government. I was the treasurer of my grade. So I was always interested in handling money. So I got some experience there, and then also learned a little bit about the responsibility of handling money and you know, being part of a leadership team in the school. So I think all those experiences kind of helped prepare me for what I wanted to do when I got out of school. And I always had I guess I was born with a sales gene, so I always had the ability to interact with people. I was always very curious, could get along with all different types of people. I grew up in an area of New York that was very diverse, and so I think when I got out of school, you know, with my education behind me and ready to go to work, I wasn't afraid, and you know, I was anxious to just get out there and make my mark.
What was your first job right after college?
So when I came out of school, I went to work for the Pitney Bowes Corporation in the dictaphone sales division. So people don't use dictation equipment anymore very much, but that was a big deal back in the 80s. The office equipment companies, you know, whether they were copier companies or fax machine companies or dictation equipment, they had some of the best sales training programs, I think, you know, in the day. IBM, Linear, Pitney Bowes. Pitney Bowes also sold postage equipment, still does. But I went through one of their sales training programs. They shipped you off to a school for a week, and you learned how to do presentations. You learned how to ask open-ended questions and how to close business. And it was a very, very good experience. And I worked at that company for a couple of years, did very well there. Actually, went back to the training school after the first year as a coach, and because I became one of the top producing salespeople in the company, and so it was just a great place to start and to cut my teeth. And I remember my salary was $1,000 a month plus commission, and you know, geez, my car payment's more than that these days. So it was just, yeah, it was a good beginning, and it was a very good company to work for, and I worked with some really talented people that helped me get started.
That's wonderful. Were you able to make the mark on the commission basis? Because I know some of these big companies, you have to fill a quota, otherwise they let you go, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How was that experience when you went to the training session, how to become a salesperson? I tell you that because a lot of people don't start their own business, or they don't get into sales because they are afraid of the uncertainty of the sales part and the commission part. And they miss the greatest opportunity to become something of value, because that's in that uncertainty is when you can actually find success, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think, it just depends on your mentality, right? And if you have a eat what you kill mentality, and I felt like I had that. I was very ambitious. I didn't, have a lot to start with. I remember back then I had 2 suits and 1 pair of black wingtip shoes. I lived in a very small apartment, very modest, had a used car, and I was hungry. So I was always out working. I worked harder than anyone else, and I think that if there's a combination of, you have to have talent, you have to have the desire to be successful and to learn. You have to be a good listener. That's super key in sales. But then you have to hustle. And because I was doing that since I was a young kid, I think I worked hard, and then I was very good at following up with people. I think that's an important ingredient, whether you're a CEO of a company or a salesperson. You should always do what you say you're going to do. And if you say to someone, I'm going to follow up with you next Tuesday, or I'm going to, send you a note, follow up with you next month, you need to be organized, and you need to do that, and hold people to their word, and not be afraid. So fear was never in my vista. So I always believed in myself, and I worked hard, but I also believed that if I worked hard and I learned as much as I could about whatever business I was in, that I could be as successful as the next guy, if not more successful. And later on in my career, I learned an awful lot about different personality types, and managed salespeople in a lot of different venues. And I learned that B players can become A players with the right coaching and resources, if they have the desire to be successful. The world cannot function, business cannot function without solid B players who show up every day and work hard and do their job. And then also, when you come across exceptional high potential people, you need to cultivate them just like a plant. You need to help them grow and develop, or they'll get bored and then they'll move on and do something else. And then I also realized that C players will always be C players, and it doesn't matter how hard you try, they'll never get to be anything but a C player. So I think, the combination of the hard work, and then some of the things I learned through sports, and being competitive, and, the harder you work, the more you work out, the more you run, the better conditioning that you have, the better you're going to be at your sport. I looked at business the same way. And so, I learned as much as I could. I read a lot of information. I talked to people who were successful and got ideas and asked for their help. And I was very organized about the way I went about my business.
That's beautiful. Dan, how do you handle rejection? That fear of rejection is what prevents a lot of people from even trying, right?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been asked that question so many times. And as I coach people that work for me today, and that I have over the years, I always took the approach of telling people that an objection is nothing else but a question. And that people are saying no, or they're rejecting you because they either aren't listening to you, or they don't understand, and you haven't done a good enough job of showing them why there's the benefit to what it is that you're offering them. And that's one of the key things you learn in successful sales, is if you don't clearly identify the features and the benefits of your presentation versus just selling the product, you're not going to be very successful. So first you have to understand clearly what the person is looking for and what their need is. And once you've established their need, then you can sell to that need with your benefits. Sure, I mean, I got an awful lot of rejection over the years in so many ways, but you persevere. I think whether it's in sales or just looking for a job or working hard in school or whatever it is, it's, you have to keep trying. You have to be persistent, and it's not you necessarily. And so sometimes there's nothing you can say or nothing you can do to that person. They're not going to buy from you, or they're not going to offer you that position, or they're not going to invest with you. And so, once you realize, don't waste any more time, go on to the next opportunity. And if you turn over enough rocks, you're going to find some gold. And, again, that just goes back to the whole hustle thing, just keep trying, keep after it, work harder, work longer, get smarter, and you'll be successful.
When I started my career as an entrepreneur, so I've been blessed to run multiple businesses. One of them is ISU Corp. We build companies. We build software for companies to keep successful and grow their profits. But when I had to face, I started myself, right? I had nobody else. It was only me. When I started to approach people after being in corporate for many, many years, I went to the top levels in computer science in different multinationals, where I didn't have to sell. I mean, you always have to sell, because you have to sell yourself to your group, you have to sell yourself to your boss and to the departments you are serving, right? Like the fact is that people are always in a sales mode, but they don't even know what they're doing. But aside from a corporate environment, I didn't have much experience on actually approaching people. So I was so afraid that I thought, I'm going to go for the impossible clients. I'm going to go for the clients that I know that will tell me no, so that I get trained by them and I get used to that rejection, so that eventually somebody will say yes. And that was an advice that I got from one of my mentors. So I started looking for these big clients, and of course, everybody rejected. But guess what? I landed 2 multinational contracts with that approach that I didn't think I was going to get.
Yeah, no, for sure. When I was in the brokerage business for a while, the retail investment business, we used to call that white elephant hunting. So, you spend a certain amount of time making phone calls to, presidents and CEOs of companies, and you would always just end up leaving a message. For the most case, you would never get through to them. But if you did get through, if you eventually sent them notes, you called them, we didn't have an email back then, you left messages, you sent them, ideas in the mail. If you got an opportunity to get on the phone with that person, you might only have a minute or 2 minutes to sell yourself, right? And, so that's true. I mean, it's just sometimes, you just reach for the sky, and if you reach for the sky enough times, you'll get there.
Yeah, and eventually the whole rejection thing fades away, right? Once you know your value and you believe in your product or service, so you're actually consulting with the person to see if that's the right fit. That's another thing that I learned. Like, not every person that you approach is the right client, and you don't want to have the wrong clients, because it's going to be painful in the process, right? So it's a discovery process for both parties, right?
That's right. That's right. And you want to smell like success, right? So when you're talking to someone, even if you don't have a whole lot, you want to make them believe you're successful. You have to believe in yourself first, because people like to deal with successful people. And so that has to come through. If they feel like you're desperate, they may want to help you, but they're not going to have confidence that they're, getting the most bang for their buck. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime education. I started, in my teens, and I'm going to be 63 this year. So, 40, 45, 50 years of education. Life education.
To your point about, feeling successful. So I follow, I'm Christian, and I read the Bible. And the Bible says, call things that are not as if they are already here. Mm-hmm. And that's faith, right? You call things into you that you want as they were already here, but they are still not here yet. And that's that confidence in self that you need, saying, I am already successful. I am already what I'm in my heart and in my brain. And then people see that confidence, and then everything starts happening for you, right?
Yep. 100% makes sense.
Dan, how did you get into banking? So you started as a sales executive, then you went into sales management. Is that it?
Yeah, so I first started out in, office equipment sales, and then was interested in investments, and so I became a stockbroker. So I went through the licensing process and became a stockbroker, commodities trader. On the retail side, I did that for a few years, and then I got interested in the mortgage business. Again, I was a kid who didn't grow up with a whole lot. So I was working in offices with brokers, and they all had family, friends, and contacts and people that they knew that they were, getting business from. And I was hustling and selling and working hard, spending a lot of hours in the evening. And I was very good at it, but I had a conscience. I was selling stocks. I was reading all the research information, and I was selling bonds and stocks to people, and sometimes those investments would not work out so well. And maybe it was because of my modest upbringing and my how I valued the dollar, that I didn't feel good about what I was doing. And so I decided to leave that business and get into the mortgage business. I felt like if I was selling loans to people who were buying a home, it was something they really needed to have, and that I was doing a service to them. And it was also a very lucrative business. I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. The market was exploding. There was a lot of growth, a lot of new construction. And I spent several years, almost 12 years in that business, in that market. Became successful loan officer, then became a branch manager, then a regional manager, and a division manager of a national mortgage company. And, I learned an awful lot. I had at one point 125 salespeople working for me, and had offices from Boston to Miami. The mortgage business is a great business. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to learn leadership management, compliance, underwriting, HR, everything you need to learn. So I learned a lot in that business, but I did get a little tired of the cycles of the business. Interest rates were up, interest rates go down, you hire a bunch of people when the market is good, then you lay a bunch of people off when the market isn't so good. And so I did very well in that business for a long time, and then I decided I wanted to do something different. And so I was offered an opportunity to go to Cincinnati to work for a bank that was growing very rapidly, a bank by the name of Fifth Third Bank. I was offered a job as a retail executive, running the home market for them on the retail banking side. And I remember when I went to interview with the CEO, I said, hey, I've been in the mortgage business and the investment business, but I don't know that much about banking. And he said, do you have a checking account? Do you have a car loan? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a credit card? I said, yes, I have all those things. He goes, okay, you know what you need to know. It's leadership, management, it's compliance, it's, credit. And so I was managing a pretty good size operation there, and then spent many years in banking in some of the larger super regional and national banks as an executive in various different markets. And then I made a decision when one of the companies that I was working for was sold to go into community banking. And I never really felt like the large corporate culture was the right spot for me. I was more of a hands-on person who liked to be close to the customer. And then I was never really good, to be honest with you, David, never really good at the whole corporate politics thing. Yeah. I have my own ideas. I really care about people. I like to do a good job for the customer. I like to mentor and coach and develop people, and I want people to enjoy the workplace. And So even though I learned a lot in these large corporate organizations about not only managing a bank, but managing large groups of people and doing acquisitions and doing just a myriad of many interesting things, I felt like community banking might be the place that I might want to spend the rest of my career. And so I've spent now probably the last 20 years in community banking. This is the third community bank I've been CEO of. I sold the last one that I ran after successfully turning it around. And what I love about the community bank world is, especially with myself as the person at the helm, is I don't like meetings. I don't like a lot of bureaucracy. I like to put a team of people together that we can make quick decisions and give great customer service. Back in the old days, if you watch some of the Christmas movies, with Jimmy Stewart and, the old savings and loan and where you knew the people in your community and you were able to help them grow their businesses. And in many cases, you knew their families or other people that they worked with in their business. It's just a lot of fun to be able to do that. And so the last community bank that I sold, it was a turnaround situation. I spent 4 years there and was able to successfully turn the bank around and sell it. And was a windfall for the shareholders who thought at one point they might lose all of their money. And in turn, they ended up getting a huge return.
That's how do you manage that? Like, when you went into the bank and saw the problems, what was your strategy to turn it around? And what was that single most important thing that you had to fix?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before about, believing in yourself and being able to create success. And so the first thing I did there, because the people who were working at the bank that I took over, they were all worried they were going to lose their jobs. They hadn't really had leadership. The people running the bank in the past were not interested in giving certain people in the organization opportunity. And so I had to, number one, come in and put a business plan together to get the bank financially back on track. But it started with the people, an evaluation of everybody that we had on the team and who needed to be cut and where we needed to fill in some of those gaps. But I think if I look back on that situation as to what the number one ingredient to the success of the organization turnaround was recognizing some of the individuals that had been at the bank for a long time that had the potential to step into roles of increased responsibility and help turn the bank around with the right direction. And so it was almost kind of like pulling everybody into a huddle and saying, hey, we can do this, and creating a very positive environment, building a team, creating a new culture, and then getting out into the community and making the community believe that if they rallied around us, that we could be successful and continue to be an important part of the community. Combination of good cooperation from my board of directors. We were successful in raising some capital, extreme and very difficult expense management. Kind of going back and saying, okay, what branches do we need to close? What people do we need to lay off? How can we save money? How can we shrink the balance sheet and reposition the bank for success? And so just a number of things, but really, to be honest, very, very basic, blocking and tackling, cleaning out the garage and, having an organized plan. And it was a lot of hard work. We didn't have a lot of money in the beginning. So, we did things like just painted the painted the branches, inside, and we came in on Saturdays, and people saw me crawling around on the floor, wiping down the baseboards and polishing furniture and cleaning up, and they followed me. They said, this guy's willing to get his uniform dirty to help, turn the bank around. And we were very successful. We sold the bank for 300% return off of our cap raise. And unfortunately, I worked myself out of a job, so I had to go what else to do. And I was lucky enough to meet the owner of this bank up here in Michigan. We purchased a small bank up in the Upper Peninsula, and then relocated the headquarters down to Oakland County, which is one of the most affluent markets in the country, just outside of Detroit. Really, where all of the old automotive executives would have their lake houses in the old days of the automotive boom. And so we opened back here in October of 21, and we've grown the bank 4 times. So from 60 million in assets to 230 million in assets in about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, I guess. Doing very well, have just a wonderful team of people. Most have all come from larger banks that want to be in a small entrepreneurial, environment. I don't wear a suit every day anymore. It's more casual. I bring my French bulldog to work with me every day, and she greets the customers when they come in the front door. And it's a lot of fun. And I think that's a key too in being successful, is just really enjoying what you're doing and building a great culture and team of people around you that all want to be in that same situation.
Dan, so many lessons of what you just said is just overwhelmingly beautiful. Thank you so much for being with me. What you just did for the bank that was failing, you showed that you cared. And you showed that you are willing to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work in front of your employees. And that set the right culture. That said, we can do this. That the people look at the leader, and the leader sets the culture. And whether the leader is engaged or not, he is the one that set the culture. When I was learning how to scuba dive, my dive instructor told me, where the head moves, the body follows. So if you want to go up, you move your head up. If you want to go sideways, you move your head sideways, and your whole body has to follow your head. And it's the same in business. It's exactly the same. And it's incredible because now another thing that you mentioned is you worked yourself out of the job. Isn't that beautiful? Because that means that you were not afraid to get another gig after that, right? Because you had the bank as your best interest, your shareholders, your employees, not yourself. That's servant leadership, right?
Yeah, no, of course, fear was never in my vista, so I never really thought about it. I had always been able to find a new job and another opportunity and turn it into a successful opportunity. But I will tell you, when I did that at age 59, that it was a lot harder to find a new opportunity at age 59, but I never thought age would be an issue for me, because I don't feel like I'm a 60-year-old guy, so I had to adjust, and for a while, till I found the right opportunity, it was a struggle, finding a new challenge. I thought about going into my own business. At that point, I started a consulting firm, was doing some consulting, and then ended up going to work for one of my former customers as the chief operating officer of a software company, which is completely at the opposite end of what my DNA is. I am not a technology guy. I use technology, but I don't like it. And it wasn't a good fit for me. I did it for about a year until this opportunity came along. But I'll tell you what, I really did appreciate working around the technology folks who are definitely different than what I was used to. and realizing how important it was for me to have that social interaction every day with my team, with people who were meeting with customers and salespeople, operations people, instead of engaging and interacting with my computer all day. I really need that. I'm built that way. So I think one of the reasons we've been successful in growing the bank is I really enjoy getting out there and meeting people. And, when you're a small community bank, because bankers don't usually come to your business anymore, unless you're a big company and you're looking for a $10 million loan. But entrepreneurs are what built this country, and people in small business, they need help from their banker. And, when you go out and you go to somebody's place of business, you can see if they have pride in it and if they have skin in the game. And I'm not talking about an investment financially, but it's a part of them. And it makes you want to help them. It makes you want to help them be successful. And the golden rule is always know your customer, right? Know what drives them, what their background is, and especially if you're going to lend them money. And all of our business here comes from referrals. We don't do a lot of advertising. We network very effectively with people, and really go about it the old-fashioned way. And it's kind of like the old style